manager of the hotel looked lost. "Room 306? We do not have a room 306 here, sir. But I had just stayed there for 2 nights." On a work trip, Michael stayed at an old Victorian-style hotel in a small town. The hotel had a creepy charm, and the wooden hallways creaked with every step. His room, 306, was on the 3rd floor, a long way from the lift. No big deal for the first night, but there was a strange draft that made the curtains flap even though the windows were closed. But things went in a strange direction the second night. Around 2 a.m., Michael woke up to faint sounds. Even though it was dark, he could see shadows moving along the walls. When he turned on the light, nothing happened. He tried to tell himself that the feeling of choking air was just his tiredness playing tricks on him. When he checked out the next morning, he gave his room number. The person at the front desk's face went pale. "We don't have a room 306 here, sir." Michael was unsure what to do, but when they got to the 3rd floor, the path stopped at room 305. Room 306 wasn't there. His bags were gone, and the key in his pocket didn't have any marks on it. He felt his heart beat faster. He whispered, "I was just there." His hands were shaking. "Everything was in my bag, including my clothes." The front desk worker and the hotel boss both gave each other a wary look. "Are you sure, sir?" Michael went around town asking people to help him find the answers. At a nearby cafe, an old man paused before speaking. "A guest became lost in that room years ago. After too many events, they blocked it off." Michael's heart was racing. He ran back to the hotel quickly and demanded to see the plans. The boss led him to an old storage room in the basement after he fought him for a long time. Plans that are covered in dust are lying on a wooden desk. He worked his way up to the 3rd floor and saw it. The 3rd floor, but the plan had been changed, and the room was now blocked off. His thoughts were going fast. He couldn't have stayed in a room that didn't exist, right? Michael had to get back upstairs quickly, but no one was around to see him. He put his ear to the wall where room 306 should have been. First, there was silence. Then there was a soft knock on the other side. He fell backwards, and his heart was racing. The knock came again, and then there was a soft whisper. "Help me." He felt fear. He ran back downstairs and told the boss what he wanted to know. "Is there anyone inside?" The boss let out a sigh. "Nobody. Not any longer." Michael did something dangerous because he was determined to find out the truth. That night, he broke into the storage closet next to room 305 and looked for holes in the wall. He tapped on the wall and listened. Then his heart skipped a beat. An empty sound. He tore the wallpaper off with his fingers as it was peeling off. The shape of a door began to show up under it. Michael's breathing got short. He pulled on the handle. Locked. He looked everywhere and finally found an old, rusty key in a closet that the cleaner had forgotten about. As he put it in the lock, his hands were shaking. When the door finally opened, it showed a room that had been frozen in time by dust. At the foot of an old, broken-down bed was his bag. After that, the air changed. Someone stood in the corner. An old, pale man with hollow eyes looked at Michael. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Michael's whole body went cold. The figure pointed at him with a hand that was shaking. "Leave," finally came out in a whisper that was hard to hear. "Before it gets to you too." Michael fell backwards and tripped over the barrier. He heard the door slam shut behind him, and the key broke in the lock. He ran down the hall while gasping for air. The boss stood in the hallway and watched him as he got there. There were no words said. He knew everything because the boss looked at him with knowing eyes. Michael left the town right away, vowing to never come back. The dreams didn't end, though. In his dreams, he saw the same room every night and heard the knocking and the whispering for help. Things he tried to forget got stronger as time went on. One night, he got an email from someone he didn't know. "Do you remember room 306? Asked the subject line. As he opened the message, his hands were shaking. It was a picture of the exact room, the same as before, with a timestamp that showed it was taken just now. His bag was still in the corner, with the door slightly open. Michael got rid of the email, shut down his laptop, and tried to tell himself it was all a joke. Then his phone rang. There was a sign that said, "You left something behind." He opened the message slowly, his heart racing. It was a picture from behind of his mirror. He was by himself in his flat, though. His room was startled by a sudden knock. Michael stopped moving. He walked towards the door to his bedroom while his throat hurt. This time the knock was soft and intentional. He reached for the handle with his hands shaking. The lights flickered and cold air rushed past him as he opened the door. The hallway had no one in it. One key was left on the floor, though. A rusty key with no marks on it. Michael looked at it, and his mind begged him to run away. He was stuck, though. He slowly and unwillingly reached for it. A voice hit him in the ear as soon as he touched the metal. "Good to see you again." The world went dark. It started as a whisper in the wind, but soon, the voice from the tree began calling my name. Ethan had always found the town's old stories funny. He had heard stories about the whispering tree as a child. It was an old, twisted oak tree that stood alone in the middle of Blackwood Forest. Old people said that if you stood next to it at night, you could hear it whisper your darkest secrets. Some people even said the tree wasn't just a tree, but that it was alive, aware, and hungry. Ethan didn't think ghost stories were true. He and his best friend Lucas still went on a hike to the tree one cold October night. Lucas mumbled as he stepped over a downed log, "Dude, this is so stupid. Instead of walking through those creepy woods, we could have a drink at my house." Ethan smiled and pointed his flashlight at the front of the room. "Don't give up now, come on." There was less noise in the forest as they went deeper. Not a cricket. Don't move the leaves around. There was no wind at all. They saw it after that. The whispering tree stood in an opening. Its bark was bent and scarred, like something had tried to get out from inside it. It had huge branches that curled up like skeleton fingers and reached up to the sky. Lucas got cold. That was creepy, but it was just a tree. Ethan laughed. "Exactly. Let's show that it's just a silly story." They did not say anything and just listened. The wind sped up and rustled the dry leaves. But then, a whisper. A low, raspy voice could be heard in the background. "Ethan." He stopped moving. His name. It was carried by the wind, but it sounded clear. "People." Lucas got very pale. "Heard that?" Ethan's mouth dried up. He took a step toward her and put out his hand. He felt a sharp pain in his arm as soon as his fingers touched the bark. The rumors got stronger. Go away. Run. Before it's past due. Faces started to appear in the bark. They were twisted and in pain, and their empty eyes stared at him. Their lips were moving in silent screams. The roots then moved. They moved like snakes and wrapped around Ethan's legs. He screamed and thrashed around, but the roots grabbed him and pulled him toward the tree's base. Lucas charged at Ethan and grabbed his arms, trying to pull him back. Something moved in the dark space under the tree. A deep, rumbling growl came from the abyss, and two bright red eyes opened wide. The faces in the bark were twisted in fear, and their mouths opened at the same time. Run! The ground gave way under them. Ethan gulped when sharp claws came up from the ground and scraped against it. The air was filled with the smell of rotting things. Lucas pulled Ethan away just as a huge, dark figure came into view. They ran away. Some branches broke off behind them. The whispers turned into screams. The ground beneath their feet shook, and the trees shook too. When they got to the road, there was silence. They went back. The tree didn't move. It was empty in the open. It was quiet in the forest. Then there was a whisper. Ethan. That night was the last time Ethan talked about it. But when the wind was just right, he could hear the tree calling his name. The hotel receptionist hesitated before giving me the key, says the hook. She said in a whisper, "No one stays in that room." Why did Daniel stay at the old hotel by the road? He was tired from the long drive. The neon sign was flashing, the sidewalk was cracked, and there was an eerie silence that didn't seem right. His only need was a place to sleep. He asked for a room, but the receptionist, a pale woman with droopy eyes, wasn't sure what to do. "There's only one left," she said in a low voice. The key was moved across the bar. "The 404th room." She spoke again, but this time her voice was barely above a whisper. Daniel turned to leave. "Don't open the door if something seems off." Daniel made a face but didn't say anything. The room was small, old, and had a musty wood smell. As he sat down, the bed made a noise. He sighed, locked the door, and put his bag on the chair. Then there was a knock. Soft, not sure what to do. Daniel made a face. No one else had checked in, he thought. He looked through the peephole and saw nothing but darkness. One more knock. He felt chills going down his spine. "Who is it?" "Nothing." The knocking got stronger. Then I heard a voice. "Let me in." The words of a woman. Chew shaking. Daniel wasn't sure. "Are you okay?" Silence. He reached for the handle, then stopped. The front desk worker's warning kept going through his thoughts. "Don't open the door." He moved back and picked up the phone to call the front desk. The voice changed before he could speak. It got deeper, turned. "Let me in." The doorknob shook very hard. It felt like something was trying to break through the door because it was shaking. Daniel tripped and fell. The lights went on and off. Shadows curled along the walls, making shapes. Long fingers, hollow eyes. There was no more banging. There was silence in the room. After that, he heard breathing coming from inside the closet. Thin and sour. He slowly turned. The closet door was open, but there was no light coming in. Inside, something moved. Daniel ran for the door and messed with the lock. A cold hand touched his shoulder as he pulled it open. He ran down the hall and jumped into the lobby. The front desk worker stood there with her eyes wide open. "You did open it, right?" She spoke softly. Daniel shook his head really hard. "There was something in there." She sighed. "That room hasn't been there in years." Daniel went back. Room 404's door was wide open. Inside, there wasn't anything. Blanket. Not any furniture. There are no walls. It was just a black, empty space. And there was a whisper from the darkness. "Let me in."